keynote speakers and the hard work of the conference organizers which has gone into organizing a big conference. I know organization of conferences is not easy because in my own particular field, I have been doing that since the last few decades, and it takes in a lot of hard work to be able to do that. So not only those who got the awards, who are behind the scenes, who have not been mentioned here because there may be hundreds of people, so they all deserve the thanks for this organizational effort. I am very well aware and recognize the fact that open distance learning is a need not of the hour, but at least I am aware of the last 15 or 20 years. My first presentation in this regard was in Beijing, and probably the year was 2006 or 2005, I don't remember exactly. And in my field of expertise in dentistry, I spoke about the fact and I gave an example, and I will elaborate on that later. I gave an example to those who were there for an international dental conference that unless people are able to learn without physically going from place to place, the change in countries like Pakistan will not happen. I was speaking from my need, and I gave an example. I did my first master's from University of Michigan in 1975, and I gave an example there that even today there would be hardly any dental school or university which matches University of Michigan. And whenever the Pakistanis have been exposed to good knowledge directly, actually moving out there and doing masters like I did, a lot of people could not have afforded that, then they excel. So it's just the knowledge which has to be given, and if knowledge has to be given, it is available with the new systems and communication systems since 2005 at least, and even earlier than that. It was possible that without that huge expense of moving as a family, staying there for quite a few years, and then coming back and trying to impart the same thing in Pakistan. A huge program was started in the Musharraf era when it was decided that PhDs should be sent abroad for learning, and they would come back to Pakistan. And imagine the delay in that whole system. Preparing, applying takes a year or two, selection processes, then going there, studying there for a PhD 3 to 4 years, then trying to, some people try and learn more and stay there. And the whole cycle may take knowledge actually 7 to 10 years to come back physically to Pakistan and to be able to be taught to the people of Pakistan. So realizing that, I spoke in Beijing, and I said that we must have distance. We must first request some universities in the world to remove copyright on knowledge. Knowledge never had a copyright. But in the last 100 or 150 years, it has gone through some copyright. It is not freely available. It is not open source. And I spoke about that, and then I got elected to the World Dental Federation in 2007, and I implemented that fact in the World Dental Federation, that every speaker who was sponsored in the international dental conferences, he would not have a copyright on that lecture because the sponsoring agency was the World Dental Federation, and therefore if there was no copyright, they established a website where all that knowledge was available. But that is related to continuing education. I probed, for example, Tufts University was very forthcoming, and they put a lot of their information and lectures to open source. It was necessary for example, in dental and medical fields, it was necessary to observe procedures as well besides theoretical knowledge. And now that is also possible to be able to observe procedures, and it has been possible. So what has happened? Why are we so reluctant to accept that? And that's a question which, if we don't overcome that, I think those who don't manage to do that are being left behind. Countries, nations, people, are being left behind. There is increasing poverty, there are available solutions. There is poor health, there are available solutions. But everybody is not easy, it is not easy for everybody to jump in. So it has to be led by governments, and it has to be led by knowledge institutions, which are the universities. If you actually follow what knowledge is like, you must recall historically what it was. There was, and since it was written, first it must have been verbal. How to light a fire must have been verbal, to be able to see that must have been verbal. But since mankind, humankind started writing things down, the earliest knowledge, maybe Iliads of Homer, and then you hear of philosophers like Socrates who did not write actually, but Plato took up the task of transferring his knowledge into his dialogues, including the Republic, etc. Then onwards, but this was all handwritten, and therefore the holder of this information was the teacher or the ustad. And the ustad and the teacher commanded tremendous respect over the ages, because he was the holder of knowledge, he had the written text, and he would write also in a written form. But then came the printing press, and that made knowledge easily dissipate, to be able to dissipate knowledge. That was the first technological progress in society as far as knowledge is concerned. And the importance of the ustad was there, but it became a little less, because knowledge was available not only through him, but in the books also, which were available much more easily. The second step happened when the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution happened. That was the first industrial revolution. You can relate that to, for example, energy being taken from coal and the steam engine. That led to establishments of factories. And what are the factories, and how do those factories resemble the topic which you are talking about today? So there was a system where there was a mass assembly of stuff, and the end product was a vehicle or whatever was manufactured. So similar to that, schools were established, which now they were brick and mortar, and knowledge in books, and there was a production line starting from class 1 to class 2 to class 12 and so on until you came to the university. So this mass production of people like you and me with improved intellect started happening. So that was a major revolution, and it started, and knowledge was dissipated into people. But then since the internet, it was available in the air, and it was very current available in the air. For example, today, if I were to read any book other than philosophy will never age. So I am still reading. For example, you may not have known the philosopher Bertrand Russell. I was reading his book, his e-book really, on my e-book, Problems in Philosophy. So those philosophical issues never get old. But all knowledge other than that has been progressed upon. Everything becomes stale. Even our textbooks. And I am surprised that there is less realization with the Arbab-e-Ikhtiyar or the government in Pakistan about this fact, that textbooks, you decide on a textbook. It's been a year since the government of Pakistan and the Ministry of Education is trying to come over a consensus syllabus, at least of 70% consensus syllabus, and once the syllabus is decided, it will be, then the lessons will be put in, and the curriculum decided, the lessons will be put in, and it will go into printing, and this whole cycle would have taken 3 years or 4 years. And by the time the textbook is there, that knowledge which is being imparted to the class 1 or a class 3 or 4 may not change too much, but the ability to communicate keeps on changing. And I've seen that, and you've seen that in your life, that a good teacher is able to communicate well, sometimes with images, sometimes with his gestures, and sometimes following a logical platform. I don't remember right now, but there was a thinker, a lateral thinker, whom I used to follow. This is about 20, 30 years ago. Lateral thinking. In fact, the term lateral thinking came up from him. And he was very good in his presentations, and he had an overhead projector. And he also, in fact, he spoke on Pakistan television also in 1980 or whatever. I'm forgetting his name. But he was a very good communicator, and his flow of thoughts went into diagrams which he was drawing at the same time as he was speaking. So communication is a science which also has improved over time. So imagine the textbooks. By the time they will be printed of 8th and 9th, they will be old. There will be immediate need for revision. At the same time, what you are talking about right now is so important that I have tried that, experimented that in my own constituency. And what I did, I was fascinated by the Khan Academy, as some of you would know that. And I picked up some lessons from there. I have always been interested in maths, but I did not pick that up in my intermediate and in my later life. So I wanted to learn calculus. And this is a story of maybe by itself is about 8 or 10 years old story. And I wanted to learn calculus, and I went to the Khan Academy, kept on learning, had problems, but then went back and kept on doing that. So the ability for a child to be able to, or in Pakistan, to be able to do that, to go back and do it on his own time with the same kind of attention as a teacher would give, that is a tremendous improvement and change in a system. So what I did was, in Hijrat colony, which is my constituency in Karachi, I gave students, there was a group of 30 students, 40 students who got admission in class 1. And with 20 of them, I gave them, through a sponsor, I gave them a pad to start learning. And these were the students who came in from scratch. They had no idea about knowledge at all. And the 20 went into the system as regular students. And by the end of the year, we found there was a tremendous difference between those who were given a pad to learn and those who were in the regular, either it was a rote learning system or whatever. There was a tremendous difference between both of them. This is exactly what I mean for everybody, for every level of understanding. This is exactly what I mean. Now, throughout the world, for example, for every system, human society interrelates with people. So for every system, what has happened is, there was a manufacturer or an artist or a person who was making some good, and there was a buyer. As long as it's a small community or a village, it doesn't really matter. It is very easily done, Whatever, something is cooked and it is given, and the village is very small. But as communication, not communication in the air yet, as communication as like the Silk Road and physical communication started happening, goods were moved from areas of scarcity to areas, from areas where they were abundant to areas of scarcity, and that is what happened. This is the information system now taking over from information from somewhere else. Where there was a surplus of information, information can be of goods, and where there was a dearth of goods. So that was happening. What has been done today, for example, in Amazon or by Alibaba or whatever, is there is immediate movement of link between the manufacturer and the seller at the retail level, and then movement of physical goods. And it has taken up everything up by storm. The world has changed. Every good is being moved. In fact, drones are being used to be able to move goods. But the same thing, because we need it, we have learned the simple steps of going on to a screen and maybe touching something and buying something and getting pictures of something.